that has been very successful in the face of its mandate, which is to interrupt power, privilege, and supremacy. So I'm not selling iPhones here, which everyone wants. I'm selling a product that no one wants because why would you interrupt your power, privilege, and supremacy? And I have 25 years of working under my belt. If we are not careful, our business can own us rather than us owning our businesses. And this is my next phase of life where I am increasingly separating from the identity of the business and tapping into really what I want my life to be like, because entrepreneurship can literally take us over.
Do you have dreams of growing into an international firm? Well, if you do, dream chasing, this show is for you. We have an awesome guest. We'll talk about her book, how she got to serving hundreds of clients overseas, because it didn't start that easy. There was ways to get there. We're going to help you avoid some common pitfalls entrepreneurs face, especially with big dreams in consulting. Thank you so much. She's smiling back at me for joining that entrepreneur show.
Thank you for having me, Vince. And thank you all for joining us.
We have an incredible episode ahead, but if it is your first time with us, I want to thank you so much for joining That Entrepreneur Show, the #1 podcast for small business owners, entrepreneurs, and high achievers around the world. I sit down with amazing entrepreneurs who share their stories in an effort to help you along this challenging journey with no blueprint, no textbook. That is entrepreneurship. This show is brought to you by Coming Alive Podcast Production. If you're looking to start or grow your show, head to comingalivepodcastproduction.com. But as I led off the show saying, we have a rock star today. She's grown her firm so large, she's living her dream, celebrating her spouse's birthday as we speak, on vacation, making time for this show. That's entrepreneurship, finding ways to squeeze things in calendars at its finest. I'd love to start with your journey in the beginning. What initially led you into becoming an entrepreneur?
So, Vince, my journey into entrepreneurship was not linear. It's actually been a really long, winding road. And so I'm going to start right at the beginning. I'm the child of immigrants. My parents immigrated from India to Canada, which is where I actually live. And I'm actually staring at a Canadian lake right now as we speak. And so my parents immigrated like almost 55 years ago, and they come from the generation of immigrants, because this is several decades ago now, where they very much embodied a get a good job, where you're part of a union, so you have job security, and that's the way to build your career, become highly educated, join a profession. And so that's what they instilled in all three of their children. Although ironically, now all three of us are entrepreneurs. We started off as employees, as professionals, and now we're all entrepreneurs. So I did the same thing. I can tell you more about my story, but my family, because we are just so different visibly, my faith is called Sikhism. I am a Sikh. And when I say Sikhism, a lot of us pronounce it as Sikh and Sikhism. That's the colonized pronunciation. As we learn to decolonize language, it's actually Sikh and Sikhism. If you follow me on Instagram, and if you don't, you really should, which we can tell you about after. My father wears a turban. He's in his early 80s. His videos go viral, for the record, because he's just so quirky and adorable. And so we just really stood out. And so I had a front row seat watching them struggle. And then I had my own struggles with all kinds of inequities, which is what ultimately led me to become a lawyer. I joined the legal profession because my parents said, you're going to become a professional, choose the profession. And so I was like, okay, I'll be a lawyer. But also, I wanted to do social justice work. But when I got to law school, all the cool kids were going to work in corporate law in the towers. And I was like, I want to be a cool kid too. So that's what I did, even though my heart was in social justice.
Yeah.
I spent 10 years in the towers working in big law, first practicing law. And then I actually stopped being a practicing lawyer and I became an HR leader on the lawyer side at a large international firm. And after 10 years of doing this, what I realized is that while I was very successful at a young age, by the time I was in my mid-30s, I was already in a senior leadership role. I had done very well for myself. I was really unhappy. And I was unhappy because I wasn't being who I really am. I wasn't being authentic. Along my journey, I had learned to push down who I am, my authenticity, and develop this corporate persona.
Right.
And I was living like a very much a binary life. And I realized it was the source of my unhappiness and I needed to change how I'm living. So in my mid 30s, I had my second career identity crisis. My first career identity crisis was when I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. I want to do HR. And then the second one was F this. I don't want to work in any tower. I don't want to work for an organization. I want to chart my own path and course so that I can determine how I develop my career, develop my skills, build a business on my terms and do it in an authentic way. And that's what led me in my mid 30s, like now 15 years ago, to start my own leadership and DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion consulting firm called Bhasin Consulting Inc., BCI for short. We now work globally. I've presented all over the world. I've presented to hundreds of thousands of people, worked with hundreds and hundreds of organizations, coached over 1,000 leaders, written 2 best-selling books, all about how do we live, work, and lead in such a way that we experience most authenticity and belonging as possible. And I very much view my business as being a social enterprise because, yes, I'm for profit. We run like a proper business. However, the end impact of the work that we do is about justice. So I'll pause there because I've probably already said a lot, Vince. I have a feeling.
You did great. I can certainly, I'm putting here in the show notes how to create social impact at the end of the day. But where our parents, they want the best for us. They want us to be in a secure position. Mine as well. We're not entrepreneurs at all. It's hard for them to just not see that certainty. So I certainly resonate with you where it's not that they don't want us to succeed. They just want to see it. Okay, you're going to get this paycheck every Friday and that's it. Cool.
Exactly. Like my father, even to this day, will say to me, I travel a lot for my work because as a speaker and a consultant, I'm always traveling. And I'll call him from the airport and he'll be like, you're going for work? Yeah. Are they paying you? Like, it's one of his favorite questions to ask. It's like, are they paying you? Because in his eyes, it's like, dear God, please let her be okay.
And yes, the world and the way of doing business has certainly changed over those years, but my resonation point certainly did hit. You mentioned how doing all this HR work gave you this motivation to have your own DEI consulting firm. Let's talk about your first international gig in this role. Let's go back in time a little bit. The nerves, not only how'd you land the gig, networking internationally is a whole lesson right there.
Yeah, that is a really good question. I'm pausing and I'm looking out in the sky. So I have been running my firm for almost 15 years. We mark our 15th anniversary coming up. And I think my first international engagement. So let me just say, I live in Canada, but the bulk of my work is in the US. And so technically, when I come to the US, that's international, but I don't consider that international because as a Canadian, we're in the US. We're in and out of the US all the time. So, I mean, I had to fly over a big body of water. Would have happened probably in year 3 or 4 of my business. And I went to Asia, East Asia, Hong Kong and Japan in particular, and I delivered programming there. And let me just add that I've been back to East Asia several times to do that since. And I remember it was so exciting because I remember when I launched my business, I tell a story about this in my second book, We've Got This, Unlocking the Beauty of Belonging, where I'm sitting on my couch with my brand new MacBook and I'm in PowerPoint, which as a former lawyer, we never use PowerPoint. Everyone, are you ready for this? We create charts in Word. Don't ask. And I am sitting on my couch with my new laptop trying to create an invoice template in PowerPoint going, dear heaven, dear the highest, please give me clients so I can use this invoice. And to go from that point of like, will anyone hire me? As my father would say, are you getting paid? To a place where I was getting on a plane and traveling to a different part of the world to teach has been just such a gift and so amazing. And then I'll also add in there, for me, one of the beauties of doing international work is that as part of my work as a leadership expert, I teach an area called cultural competence, which is how do we build bridges across cultural differences? So I'm actually an expert in this area, which has enabled me and helped me to attract more work globally.
When you first went abroad, again, we're going to stay on this trip. Were there any cultural challenges from not even the US, from Canada to there? What were some of those hurdles, or was there an English-speaking representative there to ease the transition?
So in East Asia, or the places I went, like so in Hong Kong and Japan, I have subsequently worked in China. All of the locations where I have been to for the clients I've worked with have had international presences, and so English speaking has been predominant. For me, when I'm doing international business, what's more at the forefront is how I actually present. So I'm a professional speaker. My area of expertise is leadership with an emphasis on belonging and inclusion. And I literally present to hundreds or thousands of people in one given time. How I speak, I do adjust that based on the audience. So for example, when I'm in Canada, we tend to be more indirect than pockets of the US. So I spend a lot of time in New York, the Northeast, Boston. And when I'm presenting in the Northeast in the US, I'm more direct. When I am in East Asia, I am less direct. The other thing is that I'm very mindful when I speak internationally not to use American or Canadian slang references or expressions because they don't cross over. And then the other thing I'll mention is I speak really quickly. Like if we could take my 15 years of speaking, I've literally presented thousands and thousands of times. The number one piece of constructive feedback I get when I'm speaking is that I speak too fast. I speak too quickly. And it happens period, let alone when I'm excited, because when I get excited when I'm speaking, which is a lot, I'm like Mach 60. So like zero to 5 in 3 seconds. And so I have to be really mindful when I'm presenting to international audiences where people are speaking English as an additional language to slow things down. So these are examples of cultural competence in addition to cultural nuances, like when we are working with more group-centric cultures around the world, unlike Canada and the US, where it's like we meet a client for the first time, we're doing business development, and we'll spend 3 minutes on social banter and be like, how are you? And tell me, oh, no, you lived in this neighborhood. Oh, you've worked for this company. Great, move. Now let me sell you stuff. In places around the world, relationship building is like, no, this is our first 30 minutes. Tell me about everything to do with you. Like, tell me about your grandparents. Tell me about your neighborhood. Tell me about your spouse. Tell me about why don't you have children? Like, tell me everything that we wouldn't even expect. But this is what we talk about before we get into business, because who you are as a person and your story matters just as much to me as what it is that you're selling. So these types of aspects of cultural competence, it's not only do I teach this, but then the great thing is in teaching this, I'm able to leverage it. And then the last thing I'll mention here is, as someone who comes from Indian culture is like the majority of cultures around the world. So in Canada and the US, we tend to favor more direct speaking. We are more low hierarchy. We are more individually focused in how we speak and build relationships. And by the way, this isn't me, Ritu Bhasin, creating generalizations from the sky. This is rooted in 50 years of research. So you can look up cultural competence. You can look up someone named Hofstede. He was the father of cultural competence studies like 40, 50 years ago. So we have decades of data on this. As it happens, I was born in a household which was far more group focused, far more indirect, far more high hierarchy. So I straddled two cultures because I was born in Canada, but of Indian parents. So for me, adapting and shifting my behavior based on the cultures I'm amidst is really natural. I can do it effortlessly. I feel very comfortable in it. I'm very fluent in it. And frankly, it has been a beautiful skill set for me to draw on in building my business. And I said this was going to be the last thing. I lied. And then I'll stop. I promise, Vince, because I'm sure you have things you want to
Do
ask.
your thing. You're giving a lot of golden nuggets here. Keep going.
So for all of you, thank you, Vince. For all of you who are joining today, who, like me, grew up being bullied for being different, who stood out in a bad way, it felt like a bad way for being different, who were vilified for not being like everyone else. What I'm saying to you right now is that it is my differences. It's what makes me unique that has become my superpower. And I am no longer embarrassed or ashamed of my roots like I once was. I am so freaking proud of who I am. I'm so proud to be the daughter of immigrant parents who gave up how they were living to come to a land where they were so different and struggled hard so that we could live a better life. And we are. And I'm so proud of that. And by the way, this is what both my books are about, all the stuff I post about on LinkedIn, Instagram, my websites. I want every single one of you who are joining today to stand in your power and feel beautiful about who you are. And then build your businesses, hone your businesses on the basis of what makes you special and unique. Do not shy away. Do not fear your differences, because that's what disruption is about. For those of us who are entrepreneurs, because we love to disrupt, which is me, I will always go against the grain. If everyone's saying go right, I'm going to go left, because I'm going to be like, why should I go right? You're all going right. Why are we not going left? I want to go explore why we're not going left. And in the end, I may not go left or right. I might go straight, or I may go back, or whatever. Do not fear who you are.
I love that. Just promoting your authentic self the entire episode. And that carries into one of the best ways to express ourselves, which is books. You briefly touched on those two books. Everyone out there knows I'm an advocate for it. I love writing. I love helping people write. And it's not as easy as it may seem to not just start writing a book, to finish and publish it. So major kudos here to our two-time author. While we have some time here, I want to shed some light on one of these books. We might have some time for both, but on why it's authentically you, why you chose to write that book and continue to spread these messages that you're undoubtedly super passionate about.
So, my first book is called The Authenticity Principle. And that book is all about how do we live, work, and lead in a way that is deeply connected to who we are. And the message I've just been sharing, the rather than fearing who we are, getting to know who we are, embrace who we are, and be who we are as much as possible so that we feel more connected to our own selves. And then we bring this spirit into our interactions. And in doing so, I can tell you based on my work and research that authenticity is a lot like a magnet. It's contagious. The more I share authentically and vulnerably, not just how amazing my life is, which it is, and every day I say thank you to the highest about that, but more importantly, what my struggles are, what's hard for me, what I feel insecure about, what I carry shame about. The more I talk about this with you, the more you'll be willing to do this back with me. And this is what causes us to create meaningful, connected, deep, powerful relationships, both personally and in the workplace. And that, by the way, is what the authenticity principle, the title of my book, is about. It's about knowing, embracing, and being who we are. So we have this cascading effect of empowerment, of joy, of wellness, of belonging, of safety, and so much more. I wrote that book 6-7 years ago, and it was so important that I break down for people how we do this. In the book, I have a model called the 3 selves. It's a really powerful framework for living more authentically, working more authentically. But over the years after I wrote the book, as I dug deeper and deeper into being more authentic myself and teaching more about authenticity across workplaces around the world, I started to think, wow, the outcome of being authentic, what it is that we're deeply craving, each and every single one of us, is belonging. We all long to belong. We all long to be honored for who we are. The outcome of what we desire is belonging. And that's what led me to start doing more and more work and exploring the concept of belonging, which is what my second book, We've Got This, Unlocking the Beauty of Belonging, is all about. And what's interesting is I thought the authenticity principle was deeply personal, very prescriptive. Like there's a lot of here's my recommendation, here's the framework, and it is. But I poured my heart and soul into We've Got This. Like it's a guidebook on how do you actually live your best? How do you feel beautiful in your own skin? How do you create stillness and ease within yourself? And I think for entrepreneurs in particular, my book is so important because for so many of us, we struggle deeply along our journeys. Like when you are running, when your whole livelihood is connected to a business you have built, and whether you get fed or not is directly tied back to your efforts, it will bring up your demons. And we must continue to do our healing work so that our businesses don't take over our lives and we don't become our businesses. And in fact, I can tell you, as I very shortly will hit a milestone birthday, the big 50, and I have 15 years under my belt of running a global business that has been very successful in the face of its mandate, which is to interrupt power, privilege, and supremacy. So I'm not selling iPhones here, which everyone wants. I'm selling a product that no one wants, because why would you interrupt your power, privilege, and supremacy? And I have 25 years of working under my belt. If we are not careful, our business can own us rather than us owning our businesses. And this is my next phase of life, where I'm increasingly separating from the identity of the business and tapping into really what I want my life to be like, because entrepreneurship can literally take us over.
And I resonate with that 1,000,000%. I am slowly over, I don't know, 15 months ago from this recording, I finally made my first hire with the VA, whatever changed my life. Now, this last payday, I had my first 7 people. I had paid 7 people. I'm like, holy smokes, like what is going on? But it's from letting go and separating myself from the business that I was okay with it. Let it run me, running the business. I liked my work, so I was with it. But now you realize that there are other facets of life we can't ignore. There's that quadrant where you have your personal life, your family, your professional, all of these things. How many of them are we doing well at? I was failing at many of them, just winning at a few of them. So thank you for shedding light on that. But before we let you go, before we get your contact information here, if you could sit down with any entrepreneur who you have not met yet, this could be dead or alive, to pick their brain, and it could be at any point of your journey. It doesn't have to be today. Who would you choose?
Oh, I mean, Oprah Winfrey, hands down.
Let's talk about it.
I view what Oprah has created for herself and for others as being the pinnacle of goodness. She overcame incredible adversity to get to where she is now. She did it in a way that was rooted in social enterprise, like helping the world. She continues to help the world. She has helped me tremendously, like literally tens, hundreds of millions of people around the world have been touched by her greatness. And in all of the content that she continues to put out there, there's so much humility in her energy and aura. And I think that the world needs more of her spirit. Like I think about patriarchy and how entrepreneurship has been dominated by men and how patriarchy has prevented women from getting ahead. And I think about how evil and destructive the examples are around the world of men who, in the name of entrepreneurship, are destroying the world. And I look at someone like Oprah and I look at other women around the world and I think to myself, there are other ways of engaging in entrepreneurship that are kinder, softer, more interconnected, more healthy for how we do what we do, how we bring innovation and creativity to the world. I also think about how capitalism, which by the way is rooted in patriarchy and racism, is literally destroying the world. And I think about how entrepreneurship doesn't have to always have the singular goal or objective of maximizing financial profit, and how entrepreneurship and business outcomes we can redefine what success and profit look like at a time when our world needs this more now than ever. And so when I think of someone like Oprah, that's what comes to mind for me. And that's why I want to meet her. That's why I want to change how we do business. That's why I think my message of disruption around how entrepreneurship has historically been rooted in destructive capitalism, there's an opportunity here to shift how we do business and create and innovate going forward is so important.
I love that message. I love the reasoning for picking her. And remember, her first radio station, I'm not fluent in her story, but they told her she wasn't good enough. No, and she had to continue get up. And now, arguably the most successful female in the world, and she's crushing it, just like today's guest, continuing to crush it. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I was hyped, as you said, the male-dominated world. This podcast, not by any malicious intent. I get more males coming to apply to the show than females. So I came across her, was hyped for it. She shared an inspiring story, especially for all you female entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs, everything in between. Please tell us how to get in touch with you so some of these that are inspired can reach out right away.
Perfect. So on social media, connect with me on LinkedIn. It's very professional. I always say the good shit is on Instagram, the fun stuff. So Instagram and LinkedIn. You can also drop me a line at ritubhasin.com, my empowerment site. Connect with me there. And if you are like, wow, some of what Ritu shared is really important, and I'd like to bring this to my workplace, you can check out BhasinConsulting.com, my consulting firm's site, and connect with us there.
Thank you for sharing that, everyone. Be sure to go throw her a follow and throw us a follow too at That Entrepreneur Show on all social media. We are on all podcast platforms, and I am at Vincent A. Lancy on the same. To learn more about me, head to vincentalancy.com. And to learn more about today's sponsor, Coming Alive Podcast Production, head to comingalivepodcastproduction.com. But with that, we are signing off today, an international show from Canada all the way down here to St. Petersburg, Florida. Thank you so much for the time, and thank you everyone for tuning in.